Such a
Okay.
fun one.
Such
Get
a good one.
ready. We're going to talk about friction is the new luxury. And I'm going to try to not make fun of myself for saying that. What else are we going to talk about?
Wellness for the hard stuff.
Oh, yes. And intimacy in AI and how we've suddenly gotten into bed with AI and we're just totally fine with it. And, you know, where that's going and how Kirsten is now throwing her kid in a driverless car and feeling good about it, as she should.
It's true. Romancing the real.
Yes, or just human experiences and our deep, deep desire and how that's kind of coming out and like why, I guess, is that might be coming out. And then the very last one is about, you know, hits home for Kirsten, is about maximalist mindsets, or like what I would say is potentially renamed on the podcast as maximalist expectations of consumers these days. So
Across
anyway, it'll be fun. It's going to be entertaining. Hopefully it's different. Let us know what you think.
Yep. Enjoy.
Bye. Hey everyone, it's Chris.
And Kirsten.
Welcome to Good Thinking Weekly, the podcast where we discuss the best of the best in brands, marketing, and culture.
Thousands of people, top execs from the likes of Complex, Klaviyo, Walmart, Wall Street Journal, and LVMH tune in every single week.
We run a creative consultancy in Good Co, so we know what it takes to build a good brand.
Subscribe on YouTube, your favorite podcast app, and Good Thinking on Substack for more.
All right, let's dive in.
And we're back.
Hello, hello.
Hi. All right. Trying something different today on Good Thinking.
I mean, if you've been here for 3 weeks, this is all we've been doing. So it seems like trying something new is not new here. But anyway, yes, we are trying something new.
Right. It's the new norm. I think, throwing it around, making sure that we are providing not just repetition, but real value and digging in, doing some pattern matching and really digging in deep to all the things you're writing about.
Yeah. So this podcast today will replace in my mind our
for now,
we'll see, something new. Let us know.
Yes.
If you missed that after this episode, tell us what you think. But essentially, rather than recapping the latest letter as like a kind of more companion podcast thing, what we're going to do is take the last 4 letters, so like a month worth of content, and come up with, analyze it for themes that I think are kind of bubbling up, you think are bubbling up, and discuss those kind of bigger lens trends and some specific examples that we've mentioned, in the last few letters that kind of point to that. And as always, and like we did with the 2025 predictions, we'll kind of talk about briefly a pendulum swing, because the truth is that there's really no trend without a counter trend, and there's trends all over the place. So I wouldn't say, it's just a really great place to kind of think about things and talk about them in kind of a bigger picture way, which I think will be really fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig in. And then the other weeks we'll do How Good Got Good, Good to Know, which are the 2 other series that we've launched. But definitely let us know. Let us know what's working for you. Let us know what's not. We are here for your feedback, and your input's been awesome. And that's kind of why we're playing around with this. All right. So we have 5 different themes that we're going to dig into, kind of talk about. And the first one, and I think all of these names, right, that might be part of the discussion as well. So friction is the new luxury.
Yes. I was joking that as I wrote this down, 10 years ago, everyone and their mother, probably not my mother, but she does now read my newsletter, so maybe now my mom, was saying quiet, solitude, relaxation, doing less, whatever was the new luxury, right? It was not like quiet luxury, but more reading and relaxation and downtime is the new luxury. Time is the luxury. And I think what is rising up for me, besides the hilarity of there's always a new luxury, is that there is this interesting thing happening, and I think it's a counter to AI. So it would make sense that there's kind of this new norm coming out, which previously we didn't really have AI, and maybe you could still say reading and analog things and kind of being offline is still within this, but I think it's just more extreme. I think it's just being pushed out in a different way. So do you want to give your take on what you think is happening, or you want me to dive into how I think it's playing out?
I think it's doing this. We're figuring it out as we're going. So we're building the plane as we're flying it, as always. But I think it's definitely happening. Even my kids last night that were talking about AI and how robots are going to replace us, and they're building all of this kind of thing. Like my point is that everybody's really aware of it. And I think then subconsciously or consciously, we are leading into other things that are reading, that are kind of anti-tech in certain ways. And I think for sure AI is happening. And I think the idea, there's a lot of talk now on LinkedIn, and it's AI written, and pushing back against that. And where's the real conversation and where's the real dialogue? We've talked a lot about Breakfast Club and kind of all of these IRL things where there isn't any tech, and you're really kind of picking up on these. And I think we're seeing them throughout, and there's a lot of themes, but I think it's really real. And I think a true pendulum swing, not just a trend, but something that's actually happening in all of our lives. So yeah, let's dig into what you see as those, and I'll add my thoughts.
Yeah. So what I've noticed, and I think you've noticed it too, and we've talked about it a lot, is that friction is kind of becoming like the flex, right? Like the fact that you're not making something easy for people is sort of the luxury of the whole situation. So whether that's kind of like the first one that comes to mind is what I wrote about recently, which was like a sort of one-on-one shopping experience, and then there's invite-only shopping experiences that are kind of popping up, or referral-only conferences that require you to have to like jump through hoops and do all these things. And I think for a long time, like business model of life, I feel like for the last 10 years has been remove all friction. Frictionless is the apex of great brands, right? And I think that what is now happening is that's not the case. Like I signed up for this, I'll link to it in the show notes, but there was a Substack, and I'm forgetting her name because, theme of that theme won't go away despite what we're trying new, is that I can't remember anyone's name. But she did this really interesting thing where she wrote an essay. And she was like, I'm going to send out 100 of these essays. Of course, you could get it from somebody and they could forward it to you. And like, that's probably the hope and the dream, right? But she only released 100 of these reports, right? It was like it was an essay on like the future of beauty, and like, it talked about something completely different. But it was just the idea that you like had to be there first. It has to be difficult. It's not so easy for you to get. It's not just like add your email and I'll send you this thing, which is obviously a data capture thing. It's like, like you have to be paying attention. You have to be subscribed. You have to do all these things in order to get this thing, which of course, made me want it. Like I was like desperate and I had to get it, and I got it. Like it felt really, really special. It felt super luxe. And, I think like even you could compare it to even now these like, and again, I can't remember who said this, but I will link to it in the show notes, is someone was saying like, these ads within ads, right? Like the scratch and sniff campaigns. Like you could even look at these through that lens of like, there's a friction to sort of like, you have to be in this place in order to experience this ad, right? You can experience it the other way, right? Like you can, but you can't experience smell any other way. So you never really get to experience this ad unless you walk to this place, go to this place, experience this thing. And that's okay. And we're totally okay with that difficulty, like
there's a desire for it. I mean, I think that's the desire for it. There's talking about, when you were talking about shopping, and kind of this idea of slow shopping, right? I was thinking about like going into a physical retail environment. The one that comes to mind for me is Borough on Abercrombie. You go and you kind of wander and you discover. And then the checkout process, you don't want it this frictionless, thing that you do at the airport where you don't talk to anybody and you get your bag of chips and your water and you just get out of the way. You want to interact with somebody, and you typically have a little bit of a dialogue in that. And I think that's something that we're all so starved for and looking for and interested in, that I think it's just coming up more and more. And not only do you want things to be easy. I think there's a difference between being frictionless. I don't want the checkout to be hard. I'm still like just taking my card and using Apple Pay and whatever it might be. But the conversation and the connection, I think that to me is the biggest piece. That connection piece, I think, is something as human beings, and you and I have both written about this in different posts, that's never going to go away. We're always going to be human beings, and connection and belonging is always going to be innately in us. And I think we're looking for that. And I think it's just looking for that in different ways. And I think it is showing up a lot in retail. Yes, maybe you can just get everything and maybe you're ordering everything online, but want to walk through and go into the stores and kind of experience that. What's happening with print catalogs, perfect example.
Yeah. Outline that one that you have to like literally like call a phone number.
I mean, I don't know if I'd take it that far, but
Yeah, but I think it is that. And yeah, I think it's interesting. It's not FOMO. I think there's something, and I want to kind of call that out, that it's not just about like you want people to want it, but there's actually like kind of mechanisms of like deliberately making it more challenging, more slow, more purposeful, more intentional, that you like can't just like swallow it up whole. Like, and I think that's like one of the things in general, like that I've written about in posts with AI, is like that we're going to have to create classes essentially around friction for kids. Like that will be like one of the biggest things taught in schools, will be about like how to handle like not having like everything all at once, and like maintaining that muscle of friction. And I think that that's what, it's like when you like have, you're thirsty and you're just like, oh my God, and then you have that water. Like I think this friction actually feels really satiating. Like it's just like, it's providing like this really like basic need to like not have it be too easy, which I think is something like very fundamental to people in general. Like we don't necessarily want everything handed to us on a plate. That's not how we learn. It's not how we thrive. It's not how we become better humans. And I think maybe it's coming from that.
I think that's a great, I'd love to know like the socio kind of background behind that. And also, could you teach that class to Hudson? Because like, yes, my kids need that for sure. But I think it is the idea of everything is accessible right now and everything is immediate and all day long, everywhere, for not everybody, but for many, many people. And so to have something that is the pendulum thing, that is the contrast to that. And I think we'll see more things that do feel special. I love that idea. If it's not a marketing gimmick, because that's going to go the other way and that's really going to turn people off. But something that really is heartfelt and really does feel special because you did the thing, or you waited, or you got there first, or whatever it is, going back to that and seeing that across the board in experiences, in offerings, I think is definitely something.
It reminds me of that UK brand, that jacket brand. And again, no clue on the name, so you can come in with this. But I'll describe the concept to you because it's more about the concept, and I will link to it in the show notes. But it's an interesting brand because they essentially come out with drops, which again isn't new. But you have to essentially deposit based on the drop. So you see it and they say, hey, we're going to make this jacket, right? And they make these really cool jackets. You would like them. And they're very simple, like iconic kind of from British mindset. And they make these jackets, you put a deposit down, and then when they release the jackets, then you get to say, hey, yes, like actually, like I see the real product now in the colorways that you've described, and like, yes, I'm going to buy it. And you can say no, like, and you can get your deposit back, I think. But it's just, you can't get it immediately. Like, it's going to take you 6 months to receive this jacket. There's like an anticipation of like it's going to come to me and it's going to be mailed to me. And then there's only certain they always make like the jackets are, they use certain fabrics that they're like dead stock fabrics and things like that, so that there's not like an unlimited supply in any capacity. But it's just like, it's not easy to get this jacket, like, and you like get excited about it, and then you're gonna have to wait for like 6 months. And I think and even just the ordering process is slow, right? Like you wait list, and then they make the prototype, and then they photograph it, and then you decide if you want it. Like it's an 8-month process to get this coat. And I think that there is a luxury to that. And this brand is like, it's booming. Like they have no problem selling these jackets. So I just think it's a really interesting idea of like, that makes it feel special. It makes it feel like but it also makes it feel real, like it's like, oh, like it's not just like something shoved off the line, or that, Temu decided that like, you would like it and then gave it to you. It's not so easy.
Because everybody can get that. It doesn't feel special. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge opportunity for heritage brands for sure, to come in and be relevant and modern and really do something. So
yeah, and I think a lot of heritage brands got trapped, I would say, in the like performance marketing world, where they like felt like they had to be this like always on, like, you walk by, there's an ad shoved at you, like it's like they're playing the same game as like everybody else was playing. But meanwhile, I think that they're now realizing that like, hey, actually like being accessible to everyone was never really like what made us like luxury in the first place. So I think this is for sure like a place to play. And then I would say the pendulum swing here is the like convenience, you know, like of AI, but it's also those kiosks. And I've talked about in this, like actually Matt Klein wrote an interesting piece about, like, you know, you have to figure out what people actually want. And sometimes these service kiosks making things easy is actually not making it easy. And so there is even problems with that pendulum swing, but I think it's totally that. And in the right setting, maybe that is a desirable, like, I love a self-checkout, I will say. Like, I will always pick a self-checkout, but
in certain places,
in the right,
places,
like in a Target.
Yeah.
And
Airport comes up for me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so I think there are places where that is the case, but it's like, you know, when it's like at a Dunkin' Donuts in the airport where I have to wait 20 minutes for somebody to figure out where the donut is on this giant screen of donuts, and I'm just watching them do this, like, that's not frictionless, actually. That's
Right. No, that's not frictionless. But I think the coffee house is a good example of that, right? So I was thinking about Alfred, because at LAX, you can go and you can order it, and then, you know, you don't have to talk to anybody. You don't have to do anything. It's early. You know, I have no desire to talk to anybody at that point, but I can order and do all the things and then get my coffee and it's ready. But then I think there's also the other end of that, like in a true, like, again, the one at Abercrombie or around, or an opportunity for Starbucks to then like have an opportunity of this frictionless, but then also it's even more important to like the messages that they put on cups and things like that can be even more meaningful. Like you can lean into that and you can offer kind of both services. Again, I think it depends on location, but I think those like have a great day or whatever, like hit.
Well, yeah. No, I think Starbucks is learning that. And I think that like frictionless, all I was going to say about frictionless is like, if you're going to do frictionless, make sure it's actually frictionless. Because like the Dunkin' Donuts example is not frictionless,
Frictionless
but
101.
an online order process can be, you know? So I think it's, you know, frictionless isn't the easy option either. All right. Should we move on to our second topic?
Let's do it. Yeah.
I feel like we
I know. There's some sound on here somewhere. I can do something, but yes. Wellness, something I love talking about.
And I think we talked about this at the beginning of the year. Like, it's taking on some pretty taboo, pretty hard things lately. Like, it's taking on grief, it's taking on postpartum, it's taking on menopause, it's taking on longevity, like, which is really, really related to death. And then it's taking on, you know, like even like preventative health stuff, you know, like there's a lot like going on inside of wellness that's moved kind of outside of the spa, like let's go get a facial space, right? Like wellness used to be here. It was like, okay, we got massages and we got facials, and now we've kind of like expanded wellness, and it's really like tapping into, like, I've started, and we'll talk about this maybe in a few weeks, but like I've starting to see spaces that are really tackling mental health, but like through the wellness lens. So not through like therapy and things, but like really tackling it with like wellness treatments for the brain. And I think it's just so interesting that it's becoming kind of encompassing and also bringing up for us like a lot of uncomfortable conversations are coming out of the woodwork because of it. So it's kind of nice because people give a wellness, I think sometimes they get a little bit of a bad rap, but like I think wellness is starting to like allow us to have like these really bigger conversations around what it means to be well.
Yeah. I think well said. I mean, I think that's the fascinating part for me is it's no longer at kind of this surface level of, oh, take these things and you'll feel better, be better, or whatever. It's really deep dive of like, what does wellness really mean? Let's pull back the layers. Let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about therapy. Let's talk about menopause. Let's talk about aging, but not just aging. Let's talk about, to me, longevity is like not dying. It's about really the quality of life that you're living.
Yes,
and I think
health
we're
span.
really moving past into those types of things versus just kind of what I would say was kind of surface level of like, you know, keep us going.
Yeah. And even just like, you know, I would say like the Easewell example of the AI, like I would classify that under, I would say almost wellness, because the way that they, so that company is kind of tackling, yeah, they're tackling the funeral business, right? But like they're tackling the mental load of the funeral process, right? They're not just tackling like making it easier. The way that they're framing it is so interesting to me, because they're talking about like this part, the mental load of dealing with a funeral and dealing with a death is an enormous strain on somebody's well-being. And if we can make that better, like we can make people's lives easier. It's not like, oh, we've just made, you could talk about it as like, we just made funeral planning easier, right? Like that's one way of talking about it, but that's not how they're talking about it. And so I would even classify that under wellness, of like the way
100%.
that people are framing whole businesses is around that. We can like see wellness as like a core staple of a reason to be outside of a typical wellness brand.
Yeah. I think that's huge. And I think that just speaks to, I think that's huge and is absolutely happening, and just speaks to like an awareness that with, everything that's happening, that we now have across how important mental health is and how it affects, stress brain is way more dangerous than being under the influence, like
Oh, I
way more.
totally believe that. I believe
And
that.
so looking at and turning around and looking at things, I have no idea what the statistics are. Maybe we can look it up. But I think having that awareness, and we're moving towards that, like we've always said, oh, these things are terrible for us. We know that, but really understanding how mental health and aging, all of the parts, menopause, all of those parts really affect us. And the fact that we're like, I feel like we're ungraving, like we're opening up all of these conversations and challenges and situations that used to be completely not talked. And I think in unpacking these, we're learning so much about ourselves, about each other. Like I think it's so smart for what you're talking about with Easewell. And it's brave to be able to identify it through that way, but hopefully it really changes the game, because I've heard so many people, not necessarily kind of the death aspect of it, but what happens when parents get incapacitated or do die, and kind of there's so much to uncover and paperwork and kind of this and that, that's really truly overwhelming in addition to the grieving. And now you have to deal with all of this. And I think any brand being able to say, these are the things that we do, but also, because this is a huge part of what we do in brand workshops, is what's the underlying reason that somebody is doing something, right? What are the kind of those motivations? And there's something bigger in there. There's something more meaningful than just, I want a new pair of shoes because my old pair of shoes ran out. There's something more, whether it's status, whether it's comfort, whether it's, my body's working well again, whatever it may be, there's something bigger. And I think for companies, for brands to start to really be able to identify that and really lead with that as part of kind of what they're selling and what their marketing is brilliant.
Yeah, I would agree. And then the pendulum swing, I would say, that I've noticed is like kind of a wholesale rejection of all wellness things, which I know to you is just like, whoa.
Yes.
Like Kirsten is a wellness junkie, as am I, but maybe not quite to your level. But, I think that I am noticing like a rejection of like, why do we have to have, like, why are we so focused on like not aging? Why are we so focused on like not letting ourselves just be? Like, can we just do less? Can we not optimize to death everything? Can we not like make everything about our mental health? Maybe it's not like necessarily like, I am seeing those conversations happening. And, I predict that there will be an anti-supplement movement, because we've swung so hard in the supplement direction that it's impossible that it won't happen. Yeah. I mean, and again, like those two worlds, they'll live simultaneously, and they'll live simultaneously in one person, which like could be me, for example. Like I do love all this stuff, but like there is a point where I'm like fatigued and I'm just like, yeah, I'm just going to have like a glass of wine and like just hope for the best. Like, and I'm not like 20 supplements deep every night.
Speak for yourself. Yeah. I mean, I think we're already seeing it. And I think it's great to, again, have that conversation, because I think it's a healthy conversation. I think going too much one way or the other. But I think there's also like, I think about, just like quality, like food, right? And so not necessarily things that are purely healthy for you, but like the line for Salt and Straw is always ridiculous. They just opened up I'm not going to say this right, but Lanvin, the bakery, the cookies. Yeah.
I think it's Levin.
Maybe.
I don't know. That's how I would say it.
But delicious cookies. And like, I do
They
think like those types of things are also part of that pendulum swing of like, yes, eat healthy, but also if you're going to lean in, like really lean in, make it delicious.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think that anyone is like looking for like avocado based cookies from Levin.
There's an avocado chocolate smoothie at Air One. I mean, that's delicious.
I know you feel that way.
All right. I'm going for it.
All right. Let's talk about.
Okay.
Uh,
The A.
I'll try. I'll try. I'll try a few sounds as we go. But you can give us feedback in the comments of which sound was best. Okay. So I again, like I'm making these titles up pretty quick on the fly, but I was thinking a lot about like sort of the intimacy of AI that's happening. And so I was putting like saying like the I in AI, which is obviously like artificial intelligence, should be replaced with artificial intimacy because it's really something that's happening. Like one, like I mean, you could talk about it on a very basic level, which isn't where I was going to talk about it, where people are actually like falling in love with the AIs and like they're getting therapy from AI, which like of all the
A
things
lot of
that I
people are
know,
doing that. Yeah.
all my friends are somehow, some way using AI for therapy in some capacity. So that's 100% happening. But
Yeah.
where I was really taking this was more that there's sort of this growing comfort with like allowing it into our lives that I think has happened really, really quickly, right? Like the thought of somebody, so Wonder, which I've wrote about recently, is a food delivery app, and they are planning something where they will take your biometric markers, so like all of the blood tests that you've had, they'll take any like kind of glucose monitor readings things that you have, and you're going to give it all that information, and then it's going to create like essentially meal plans. But you're going to have like this very, very, very like doctor level relationship with a food delivery app, and that's intimate, right? Like that's really like you're really giving a lot of leeway to AI in a way that I think has kind of surprised me of like how comfortable people are, because like people are still complaining about Meta stealing their data, but like meanwhile they're like, here AI, like let me give you like everything about me, including my family history, including like to make me something perfect. Like you're just like shoveling it over in boatloads into the AI. So there's just something so interesting to me about this comfort that we now have, and we've like kind of gotten into bed with, and I think it will only increase.
Right. Right. I think that's a really important thing to like think about and pause on. And I'll use like I think the most poignant example to me is Waymo. Right? Like the fact that I mean I have a car that is self-driving, and 10 years ago when I was like having it self-drive and like relying on that feels really creepy. Feels really like, oh, this should not work. This is not good. That's not helpful. But now like Hudson is riding in Waymos, and we all know like the knowledge base is that, well, it's going to be safer than somebody driving around in it. Computers work better, don't they? But I think like that's a great example of this is happening, and we're almost like it's just happening in our lifestyle, and it's not as much of the awareness of like, oh, when I'm filling out something for Meta, okay, well, I don't want to give it this necessarily. Oh, I'll give it this information. I won't give it this information. But the fact that like I'm going to put my 13-year-old son or let my 13-year-old son drive in a driverless car and not think twice about it is something completely different. So it's like the awareness around that, because it's for sure happening, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's just so. Yeah, I think there's just like it's a really interesting sort of change that's happening, and I think there's lots and lots of things to think about. But I think it's just like understanding that as companies start to like take on this sort of like role, right, where they're taking on like more and more and more of people, right? Like they essentially like Wonder is now becoming your doctor. Like you are taking on enormous amounts of responsibility that people will probably ultimately like hold you accountable for. So it's like it's such an interesting place where like now brands are coming into these like we are rejecting wholesale like doctor's advice, right? Like everybody's just asking ChatGPT what are things. And the new sort of like trust people, like we're giving new levels of trust to brands. Like it's just such an interesting landscape to me, and it's like it's really fascinating. I don't know what it will do and what you should take away from this, but it's just I think it's really, really interesting, like how quickly we're coming to this.
I think it's fascinating, but I think it's also I think one of the takeaways is just that we're and I'm certainly included in this, we're starting to give information freely because of the technology that it brings. And I think you know, on the list you put meta glasses, and I think like seeing those and understanding how they work, you know, and having the experience that you and I had with Google Glass early on, you know, arguably too early, is just interesting that now the fact that you know, you can be in Mexico and you can see through it and it'll translate whatever it is somebody's saying, or the sign or directions that you need to go. Like, you're willing to give up, like, you know, any of the other things that normally filling out a form or doing kind of an old school way, you'd think twice, maybe a few times about it. And now, just because the technology is doing what you wanted to do, and again, I'm certainly guilty of this, it's like, no, here, you know, if it does the thing I need it to do, you can have all of my information.
Yeah. It's a wild and wonderful time.
But then, you know, is the pendulum swing going to be like more that personalized service, and kind of all of that is going to be even more important because AI gives us a lot of things.
Yeah. And I think that, and I think one thing that I've been thinking a lot about and that's been written a lot, I would say a lot ish in my world on LinkedIn, is about like sort of also an intimacy with self. So like there's a lot coming up around like intuition, right? So it's like you're now like, you computer will control all these aspects of my life that I find stressful to figure out, like what to eat. Now it's like, yeah, if I could have like the AI figure out how to make my picky eating daughter like eat more things without me having to like actually like mentally negotiate that, like, yes, please take that. But there is also like a newfound wisdom that I think is growing in people, an intimacy with self, where they're like, oh no, like that actually doesn't feel good, or like, you know, respecting the concept of intuition, I think is growing. So that's cool.
For sure, cool. For sure.
And
I
needed.
mean, yeah, very, very needed. And if that's the other side of this, I am all here for it, because that's a huge part of certainly my social feeds. Amazing.
All right. Number 4. I'm calling this romancing the real, but we could also call it like wanting to be more human, or whatever we wanted to, you know, coin it. But it's really about the sort of the growing sort of expectations around experiential. But I was trying to think about like why is it that we are so like obsessed right now with having these like really like hyper maxed experiences. And I think like there is an argument that like we are so inundated that like like it has to be at the max or we don't even feel it, and it doesn't even matter, like it has to be better and better and better. But I think like, and this is probably not a new concept, but it's where I think it's where it's coming from, is like this idea that like these real life, like the idea of going to the world's biggest concert, right? Like the Corona concert that happened in Brazil, like, and it's just like, I mean, like that gives me like so many bits of anxiety around the exit strategies. But if I were to put that like personal anxiety aside, like the thought of just like having that as a memory is so like potent, right? Like it's just like I'm romanticize the idea about having that as like this core memory for myself. And I think that like when you go to these places and you go to like these food things, it's about like, you know, you had this collaboration and it was only this one time, and that bite was so delicious and it was just like everything you wanted and it was such a cool thing, and then it evaporated, right? And it's just like that's romantic, like that it's just like it's like it was there for me and it was such a magical experience, and like and then it was gone. That's my idea.
Totally.
But tell me what you think.
Well, I
We
think
could also just make it more basic.
I mean, I still think it's a reaction from COVID and then some. Just we want experiences. You know, we've realized how, you know, I think in COVID we had the opportunity to literally rethink everything. And I think that was one of the things. And then I think AI and kind of all of these automated, what we were talking about, is like the other end of that. And I think it's a yes and. We want those things too, but we want these in-person experiences. That's why Breakfast Club, that's why the tour, that's why like it's gonna be, we want to have them as memories, but also as experiences in that moment. And that's where we've decided travel. That's where we've decided like that's really important to us. And I think that's not going away. And I think all of these other things are, you know, going to continue to push that. That's going to be even more important. The run clubs, all of that. I think it's really figuring out what the experience is. But I think people will continue to pay for it and want those, especially as things get more
Yes, I will say that I think like it needs to have this sort of like level of wonder these days. That's kind of where I'm thinking of the romance. Like I think just doing like just popping up and like handing out like swag ain't cutting it anymore because there's no wonder, there's no magic, there's no like the expectation of real is that it is the kind of counter of like the frictionless like order a shoe online and like get shoe delivered to my house in the right size. And I think that there needs to be this sort of like, well, what are you sort of eliciting in people? Like it's emotional, right? Like the in-person shopping thing that I talked about by normal, like obviously having it at Barney's, which is gonna like, never be there again. There's a romance to that, right? Like again, it's like this is gone. So it's not just a big empty mall with like or room with like a bunch of shops in it, right? Like there is this sort of magical element that needs to be there right now.
Yeah, and I think it hits on that emotion. Like I do think as like almost speaks to the same thing of the intuition part. Like I think and I hope for sure like our feelings are coming up more, right? So and we're more aware of them. Like this is hitting on all the things we talked about. We're more aware of them with mental health. So we want to feel those in those experiences. And so I think romance, nostalgia, like those things really hit. And I think making sure that there's the experience, but also that whatever that emotional note is that you're really hitting that people are here for. And I love that.
Yeah. And then obviously the pendulum swing, which I've been reading a lot of interesting kind of like, I don't know, stuff about like how we should divide Gen Z into the pre-COVIDs and the post-COVID groups. Like the kids that came of age in COVID behave extremely differently to the groups that came of age into this like kind of more teenage age prior to COVID. And the kids that are sort of post COVID or during COVID, even specifically, behave in a way where they value their online personality more than they value their in person personality, where they see the online version of themselves as like the place where they really like truly express, and the offline version is just like the thing that you're doing in between. So like the example I read was like someone was just like, yeah, like who I am at school. Like, so you used to try to be cool at school, right? And like being the cool kid at school was like a worthwhile exercise. Of course. And then, but now, like being cool at school is irrelevant to these kids. They want to make sure that they're cool to the group of people that they're friends with online. And if they're not cool at school, like it just sort of doesn't matter. Like this place is like it's like a faux reality that they have to like wade through every day. But like their real world is over here. And that is happening.
That's fascinating, frightening, and a lot to unpack in that. Yeah, but I can see that.
Yeah. I will link to a post by a Substack called Akin that's been writing a lot about it. And like I would say it's like relatively grim notion, but I think it's in a good awareness thing. And generally speaking, like I don't subscribe to the whole like everybody is like doing one thing type of belief. Like I think that is unhealthy and not true. But I do think understanding that people view themselves in these kinds of two worlds is an interesting concept to kind of be contending with.
And I think everybody has that, right? I mean, that group sounds like they
the cringe,
see this
like,
more,
that,
right? Exactly,
yeah.
Right. But everybody has what their personality is, yeah. But and I think like for me, it allows me to like lean in more to the cringe and like push myself to be vulnerable or say the thing or whatever it is. So I think it's interesting just to look at that in general of like those two worlds for everybody's kind of personality.
And I will say, like, I can see if you want to like bring it to like a positive example.
Of course
like,
I do.
Even the newsletter, right? Like what I write about in the newsletter is very much my personal perspective. Right? And I share it with clients and but like a lot of it is deeply my lens, right? And for a long time, like I would probably not have had identified with this this online person couldn't have met, like it just didn't exist. But now this online person like kind of has a life of her own, and I have a real life over here where I like work with clients and do all this stuff. But like now I have this second life, like that lives on the internet.
But that's a great example of where I think it can be beautiful if it can be a place where you kind of push yourself and try things, and then it becomes a sense of like empowerment and connection. Like I think that's beautiful, and ideally what what that can do for
Right.
us.
And they hopefully, I think what I hope is that kids figure out a way to like merge them back so it doesn't feel like two separate things. And part of that, like in the moot conversation, is that sometimes they just don't have a space to like have those worlds, like the offline world, be fostered. So the online world becomes the escape, the need, the obsession, because there isn't really like a fun offline version for them.
Right.
Other than school. Like honestly, like if school were your only offline version, rough.
Yeah. Okay. Last and final, and one of my most favorite things to talk about.
Well, because it's you in a bottle. I'm calling this the maximalist mindset. So, like, for a long time, I think we've talked about quiet luxury, and this can actually, I think, live in the world of quiet luxury. So, it's not like a counter to quiet luxury. It's more, it's what we were talking about earlier in getting the most out of everything feeling. So the sort of the thing that I was looking at was like, okay, Airbnb offering glam and this and that, and it's like, you know, like, okay, now like when you go to, like, already this is the case, but if you like go on a girls trip, there'll be this expectation that like all of these services would be like available and included. The idea of the skincare minibar or the supplement minibar versus the this, like I can't just sit in my room and like decompress for a moment. I have to be like trying on a new skincare mask or like taking methylene blue to know if I want to like take methylene blue, you know, like there's no place to like kind of not maximalize right now. And like I think again, like it's, you could argue that that's like it's too much consumerism, blah 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 blah, but I think it's also about like wanting things to be like kind of the best they can be, right? Like it's like when I talk about my travel philosophy, like I pack it in when I travel, and that's because I want it to be like the best like experience that I can get when I can get it.
Totally. I mean, I live this way. Like, I think it's just about like squeezing the most out of the lemonade, like getting the most out of life in all of the parts and pieces. And I would argue it's not necessarily just consumerism. Like when you were talking about all the things you could do back in your hotel, maybe it's a meditation, but it's like having the right music on it. It's having the right eye mask on it. It's having the right seat cushion, but it's like, it's really leaning into whatever it is that you're doing to the full ability to the, you know, to make it the best, whatever it is that you're doing. Just being, reading a book.
And I would say that the expectation of that is rising. Like if I were a brand listening to this and it's like, what do I do with this? I think that it is coming also out of AI. Like it's like, you know, the expectation of like what things can do and like how good your brand experience will be. Like there is just this assumption that like, if you're going to offer me a towel, like the towel needs to be good. If you're going to do, you know, if someone I read, I think it was Casey, but I'm not sure, was talking about how like packaging, like, yes, you could argue that like packaging is wasteful, but a lot of people like are saving their packaging. Like it's a keepsake of like this thing, it's a memory, right? And like, even that, like, so like, yeah, you might have a maximalist packaging thing, but like, and you could argue that it's not sustainable, but if somebody's keeping it and they're like actually really like using it, like maybe it's more sustainable.
Right. It's part of the
So I
journey.
think,
It's part of the consumer journey that you can offer and that people really
I think
connect
it's
with.
just, I think it's just like there is just this obsession with getting, more juice out of the lemon type of thing. And I think there's a lot that brands can do with that, like in the hospitality space, in the wellness space, in the retail space. I think that's even like what's happening right now is like, I'm not going into retail to like have a lukewarm version of the online shop that you have that's also kind of a lukewarm experience. Like I'm coming in to like really have an experience, and that's what Pranton's doing. And it's maybe I should call it like maximalist expectations rather than maximalist mindset, because I think it's just like our expectations right now are like absolutely like at the max.
Yeah. But I think, you know, it all makes sense. And I think exactly like that was a great example of online. You don't want to, you know, you see online and it's, you know, white backgrounds, kind of simple pictures, whatever it might be. You don't want to go and walk into that store where it's just kind of this super minimalist. You want to experience something, and almost takes all of those parts and pieces of like, I want the romance, like bring the clothes to life, show me the mannequin, but show it in a way that's really detailed and that you can do more than it is online. It's like, what's that? What's the furthest you can take that experience? Because that's why you're going, in person for it.
Yeah. That does also bring me back to the friction thing, is that one of the things I've noticed is also brands launching products just in retail. And like that ties into this maximalist idea, right? Of like, I can get more out of retail than I can get online, right? Like it's like, that's the expectation. If you're going to create a retail experience, like I want to get more out of it, whether that's like exclusive products, exclusive experiences, like kind of white glove service, like blah, 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 blah.
Right. All right, the pendulum swing.
Yeah, I mean, no consumerism, like, which is like, like it's, I think it's definitely happening. I think we'll see more of it as like, watching the tariff wars is like, it's like a soap opera, but like, I think more minimal, more thoughtful, like and you've written about this recently, I think on LinkedIn, of like really like, I am seeing more people really truly get into like capsule wardrobes, investment pieces again, like less like fast fashion, like just less consumerism. And I think that will continue to grow, like, and will be again in both people, right? Like just how I talked about travel. When I travel, I like really pack it in. But when that's with you for work travel, when what I'm leaning towards more when I go traveling with Dave is like trying to do fewer things, right? Like it's like, I don't try to do that many things with Dave because I'm trying to like spend time with Dave. And so I try not very healthy, I hope. But like it's like I've talked about this with somebody at Amigo, where she was just like, yeah, I just planned one or two dinners on my trip, and I actually don't, and then I just kind of leave everything else to kind of like fill in around, and I decide how much I'm going to do. And I do think like those two pendulums exist now within both people, right? It's like you don't have to be like maximalist at every sort of moment of your existence.
Right.
You can be if you want to be, but most people aren't necessarily behaving like this all the time, but you can identify when they are behaving like it and when they're not behaving like it.
And I think that is another big takeaway is like, and we know we've talked about this before, like gone are the demographics of just like putting in a person into like this income, this, specific, like this is what they're reading, this is what they're doing. And I think the same thing that even shows more so of like one person doesn't just do this kind of thing all day long, right? They could be a maximalist, but then they could have a really minimalist wardrobe, or when they travel, or whatever it may be, in sport. Like I think there's the duality for everybody. It's just about really where they are in that moment.
Yes. And I would say, like, please throw out all your brand books that have that page in them, your muse. But if you're gonna do it, like, spend the time to exercise this pendulum sort of swing, and like ask yourself, like, what are the sort of the pendulums that are swinging within these consumers? Because I think you'll uncover like lots of opportunity that maybe you're just sort of like leaving on the table of, things that people want and need.
Yeah,
craving.
For sure. It's a yes and. All right, that wraps it.
All right. Was this fun? Let us know. Drop a comment.
Love comments.
Which of the 5 like things? So what we talked about was frictionless. Friction is the new luxury. Wellness is
for the hard
tackling
stuff.
The hard stuff. The I in AI should be replaced for the word intimacy. Romancing the real, or just like, experience, desire for experience, human experience in general. And then also this maximalist expectation or mindset. Which of these 5 are you noticing, and where? And did we get them right? Or like these just themes? These are themes. So like, let's talk about them. I wouldn't even call them trends. I would call them themes.
And let us know how this is working, format, all the things. We'd love to hear from you.
Ciao.
Bye.
That was it for this episode of Good Thinking. Don't forget to tune in next week.
If you found this valuable, subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast app.
And don't forget to read on Substack for even more insights.
And if you really liked it, drop us a heart. We'd love to hear from you.
Ciao. Until next time.